Way to save the season to throw. Fire down! Incomplete down at the goal line by San Diego. Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. They have to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
What's up, everybody? The last preseason game is in the books. We're here to talk about it. We're going to go over our 53s. Thanks for joining us late on a, Friday night. And let's get into it. So, guys, what do you we'll probably review these, and then we'll go over kind of our 53s. If you guys weren't here last night, we gave our 53s before the last preseason game. We'll pull those up and then let you know if anything's changed. So, what do you guys want to talk about first? What stuck out to you guys, Craig?
My dream may actually be realized. When we get to our 53, we will touch on that. But I don't know if that Max Duggan's going to make the 53-man roster, and I feel much better about that right now. That's the main call out I have. Other than that,
after what he did in the second half, you think that solidified him?
Garrett, they could literally put Austin Eckler in and do what Max Duggan did. I mean, they only passed the ball when they absolutely had to. Mm-hmm. But again, we're not at our 53-man point yet. Okay. Hold off.
All right. So you're happy that your dream might be realized, at least in your mind.
For now, and I'm going to hold on to that until Tuesday.
In his vacation brain mind.
All right. Yep. Jamie?
Well, I think for me, the call out or the storyline or however you want to put it is really just, and they talked about it on the broadcast, is how competitive the Chargers' depth was in this game. They didn't look real good to start on offense or on defense, but they settled in. And the defense in particular, I thought played really well tonight. You know, they got gashed in the running game a little bit, but you expect that with the 2s and 3s and 4s out there. But the secondary as a whole played pretty well. They had some good production out of a few of their linebackers. We saw some flashes out of CJ Okoye again. I'm just really impressed with the overall development of the 2s and 3s in particular, with guys like Cam Brown. Dean Leonard had a really good game. Woods, I think, led the team in tackles, and even though the technique wasn't great, he's much more physical and willing than he was last year, so you've seen some progress there. Mullen flashed a couple times. Henley flashed a couple times. Mikel Jones flashed a couple times. Just all up and down. Not all those guys are going to make the roster, but it really speaks to what they're doing from a coaching perspective, and also, honestly, what they're doing from a scouting perspective since the coaching staff came in a couple of years ago. How they're finding these guys and developing them and kind of uncovering them, I think has been really impressive. And it's the second preseason in a row that we've talked about this to an extent. So that's encouraging.
Yeah. The depth is good. It made it somewhat entertaining, even going into the third and fourth quarter of the last preseason game, which we haven't been able to say in the past couple of years. But I think you mentioned Dean Leonard. He had a pretty good game. He had a missed tackle on Brandon Ayuk early. Ayuk early in the game. But then he had the fumble recovery. He was sticky on that Ayuk fade route in the end zone. He got a pass breakup that Mark Webb almost intercepted on third down. And then the next series, he broke up a pass on Chris Conley on third down. So he was good today. I thought Stone Smart was really good today too. He only had the one catch, but as a blocker, he was really, really good. He was the kick out blocker on that really long Joshua Kelly run, with Zach Belly helping out at the line of scrimmage. And then that kind of run play where Stone Smart was lead blocker was able to get a block so that Easton Stick could get the first down. I mean, he was really, really good in the run game today, and the hands looked really good when he got the ball thrown his way. So I don't know. It's the preseason, and we're getting kind of caught up in these little games with no starters, but Stone Smart really flashing a lot more than Trey McKitty, who, had a really bad, I don't know what that first play from scrimmage was with him and why they designed those plays with him. But yeah, Stone Smart obviously flashing more than McKitty has. We haven't seen Parham yet, but or Everett for that matter, but Stone Smart really making some noise and probably starting to climb that depth chart a little bit heading into the season.
All right. So I know I trolled a little bit at the beginning of this with Duggan. So let me be a tad bit more professional. Okay.
Oh.
So
professional is no fun. Come on.
Yeah.
Man, look, I'll do the best that I can. So we already kind of spoke to this in the depth and everything, but what I was impressed by is the fact that the secondary guys, particularly because they're primarily backups, held their own pretty decently against the Niners, who came out with a bunch of starters for at least 2 to 3 drives. So, I mean, to say that they were able to get out of it, relatively unscathed, is saying a whole lot. I mean, even with regard to both JT Woods and Dean Leonard, they were kind of hit and miss at times, but it seems like whatever they, messed up on the beginning of the game with regard to coverage and maybe giving up a play they made up for later on outside of just pure effort. And, there are still some technique issues. Dean Leonard got beat on a play by, Chris
Conley,
former Chiefs receiver Chris Conley, but Conley got away with a push off. The coverage was actually pretty decent at the very end of the route. Conley kind of nudges him out. And so, you have to give him a little bit of credit there, a bit of a pass. But even JT Woods. No, they didn't call it.
Mm-hmm. No. That was later. That was later.
Yeah. And JT Woods, on that play that actually both he and Dean Leonard whiffed on. Leonard missed first, Woods missed second, led to the larger run after catch play by Ayuk. But what I was impressed with regard to JT Woods is the fact that even though the technique isn't there, he's not a complete liability in the open field anymore. You saw him make a few tackles in one-on-one situations where just last year you would have seen him duck his head, maybe even close his eyes, and it ended up being a bigger play than what it turned out to be. So I was really impressed with those guys just in their consistency at this point.
Yeah, I think with Woods, what we see, going into last preseason, my concern with him was his technique was bad. Then we saw him on the field, and it was more than just the technique. It was he wasn't really willing to make tackles. The angles were bad. Like Craig said, he was closing his eyes and diving at ankles, and he was just not good he couldn't count on him as a tackler, and he couldn't be on the field. This year it's a little different. He's willing to make those tackles. He looks more like the JT Woods that we saw in his college tape, where he's coming downhill and trying to make tackles, and he's willing. The technique just needs work, and that should be the easiest thing to fix. It's hard to teach a guy who doesn't want to tackle to tackle, but if you've got him back in the mind frame that, okay, I'm willing to hit somebody, now you can teach him the technique and you can bring it all together. And that might not happen this year, but it seems like the tackling is likely to get better just based on the progress that we've seen from last year to this year.
Yeah, and I think, having those starters in for the 49ers in those first 2 to 3 drives was really nice for these second and third stringers to be able to get some real game time reps with these starters and see where they lie. I mean, we kind of saw how the offensive line did, which was terrible. They weren't ready, but defensively, they drove down pretty nicely, but was able to get a turnover at the goal line with a Nick Niemann forced fumble. And then they drove down and scored again. But, offensively, they were able to drive down pretty nicely at one point. It was nice to get those kind of reps in. And it was nice to see kind of those, end of the depth chart, probably end of the 53 linebackers and Amon and Neiman get some rep with some of those guys like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and everybody.
Yeah, and they flashed a couple times. I mean, Amon had a couple opportunities at run stops that he just overran a little bit. The angle wasn't great, but he was there. You mentioned Neiman's forced fumble. A lot of those guys who were, at least in our opinion, are going to make the team or in a position to make the team, they all contributed and they all flashed at times. So that's encouraging. There wasn't much. I mean, they won. There wasn't much offensively to write home about. You had the long run by Joshua Kelly, which I didn't think he had that kind of juice. I didn't think he'd outrun anybody like that. So it was impressive to see that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there were really, in my opinion, only two guys that stood out on offense. And I think they were, you mentioned one of them, Garrett Stone Smart, who had a really good game. And the other one, in my opinion, was Zach Bailey. He made a bunch of really key blocks playing right tackle, which is a position he hasn't played through most of camp until this week. But he's good in space. He's really good at the second level. They've got him pulling, and he's effective in that role. He made a key block on Kelly's run. He made a couple other key blocks late in the game as they were moving the ball down the field with the running game. So Bailey's a guy who I'm kind of excited about as offensive line depth. Whether they keep 9 or 10, who knows? But Bailey looks like he's a guy who's put himself in position to make this roster just based on the reps he's getting and the versatility. And he's shown at guard and tackle that he can get out to the second level and make some big blocks for them.
We're going to mention the ineligible man downfield.
I must have missed that.
Oh,
yeah.
He thought it was a run play and a pass play.
Yeah, I don't know. He climbed to the second level. He's looking at the backer. There was about like 7-8 yards of space between the two of them. And he was just looking for work. He just climbed upfield and got a little too far. And I mean, I'm going to give him a pass just because he was giving full out. I mean, I like the performance, so I'm not going to give him a down night just because of one bad penalty. The guy played a pretty clean game.
No, that doesn't affect his entire game, but let's be honest. It was a quick out. He wasn't looking for work. He was out there thinking it was a run play, trying to pick off the linebacker second level. But regardless, he was good. And he's the one who helped spring Kelly in the first place of the line of scrimmage. He was good. Sorrell was not. And neither was Pleasance, as my camera goes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Craig.
No, I was just going to say Austin Pleasance is literally a traffic cone. And the worst part is he can be beat anyway, whether it's speed or power, because he's completely flat-footed. There looks like there's zero athleticism there. And at this point, I mean, what are we doing? Just have Bailey as your kind of utility interior and offensive tackle guy that you have to swing and put him where he needs to go. Pleasance, you can't keep that dude around. At this point, he's just a body, and he's going to get someone hurt.
So we mentioned Zach Bailey. We talked about Stone Smart. I thought Darius Davis in the limited work today on that end around looked real dangerous in the sweep. He had like a 16-yard gain there. And then I thought Elijah Dotson was pretty effective. I think he was averaging like over 5 yards a carry. He did really well, and then they took him out, and Tyler Hoosman actually did pretty good too, who I think is probably going to be a practice squad stash after his performance today because he really did good in that second half.
Yeah, Hoosman is kind of a nice compliment to Dotson because Dotson's kind of more of the slasher, and Hoosman's looking to put his head down and run through somebody. So it's kind of a nice 1-2 punch there.
Yeah.
Well, we got to have a really good look at the both of them on those 10 straight offensive carries. But I mean, that's one way to showcase your running backs. It's also one way to show that you have absolutely no confidence in the guy that you drafted. But I don't blame you.
Are we gonna and you're gonna ignore the fourth down throw to Camp Moyer, the Mahomes-esque off script throw?
No, wait, hold on.
Fourth down.
Yeah, hold on, G. We're not doing that. I will not allow it. And you will not participate in these shenanigans. Did I say Jamie? I mean Garrett. Sorry.
No.
We will not participate in these shenanigans. We know exactly what happened in that play. You run the ball as many times as you did. The defense is probably not looking for you to pass it, but the odds of you scoring if you run again are not that high. So I think they threw the ball because they had to, and good on him for making the play happen. Mm-hmm. We're not going to ignore the fact that they ran the ball 10 straight times before that, though. I can't.
I will say though, bringing up that play brings up somebody else that we should mention in Camp Moyer. He had a couple nice blocks tonight as well. Made a play in the red zone, caught a couple other balls, I think. If you're looking for McKitty to not make the roster, Camp Moyer is a guy who provides some special teams value. Now he's showing he can block. He's making some plays in the passing game. McKitty was invisible again tonight. He didn't make any. They schemed some plays up specifically for him. He didn't make any plays at all. I don't really think he showed up as a blocker at all. It's getting harder and harder to justify carrying him. I'm sure they're going to stick with him, but Kent Moore is making it, I think, a little bit more difficult than anybody anticipated.
He's going to be a practice squad stash, I think. But yeah, I think he had 2 catches today. And then, did we mention Henley yet and his interception today?
No.
Henley?
I mean, I mentioned him briefly when I was talking about the Death playing well, but
almost had a pick in the end zone too.
He almost had 2 picks. And I think what you kind of got the good and the bad with Henley tonight. He vacated some gaps and struggled a little bit against the run, but then you see him covering ground and anticipating throws and breaking on footballs in the red zone and, in that intermediate part of the field. He looks like a guy who's going to be a weapon in sub packages, both in coverage and from what we saw last week as a blitzer. So, he may not get a whole lot of reps in base defense, but in sub packages, having that kind of speed on the field to cover and blitz and not know where he's coming from could be kind of fun to watch.
And the athleticism shows up even in the misses. When, he's attempting to attack holes and he may just not be properly reading keys and he's out of position just slightly. You can see him still coming downhill, and it doesn't look like he's overthinking it. It just looks like he's playing as hard as he possibly can, and he may just be a step or 2 slow. And it's causing him to be out of position in some of these tackles, especially on runs to the inside. But again, he's not played the position a very long time. So it's something you can develop, and you just continue to tutor the guy, and being in the linebacker room that he is with Eric Kendricks in front of him, be able to help him along the way, I'm sure will pay dividends as the year goes along. But yeah, absolutely. If you want someone out there in sub to play even like a dime packer position, if you want to roll that way because he has the athleticism to cover ground and the speed to do so, then yeah. And he can still also make tackles in the open field, because that was the thing that was probably his strongest asset coming out of Washington State, was the fact that he was a very good tackler even in the open field. So you got a guy who can cover with a little bit of size to him, pretty decent speed, and he's a solid blitzer. So you can definitely throw him in a defense and be able to find a way to make adjustments where necessary to utilize guys in coverage against some of your tight ends, maybe even cover a slot wide receiver or 2, because he has the speed to do it. And looks like he has the agility to match up there also. So definitely someone that the Chargers can take advantage of.
Just want to give a quick shout out to Jamie mentioned a little bit up the top, but Cam Brown, he's the one who had the deflection that Henley was able to catch, and he played pretty good today, and so did Tywone Mullen, who was forced an incompletion on 3rd down today. Both those guys trying to fight for a spot there. So one shot at them out before we move on to 53s. Anybody else you guys want to talk about today before we move on? I think we pretty much got it all.
I think we pretty much got it, yeah.
Cool. All right, so Craig, you've been teeing this thing up since the beginning. Let's look at your 53 from yesterday. This is where we stand. You were the one with 2 QBs. You also had defensive line. You had Nick Williams, Hinton, and Gerard Clark, where you made up for one over there. And you have Mark Webb as a safety. How are we looking today? What are you thinking? Does any of this change?
Not for me. Everything staying pretty static.
Okay.
I'm not seeing much that from tonight that would make me change my mind a ton. I guess the only thing that I would question at this point, well, you know what? No, because the way that they utilized Darius Davis told me a lot. They actually put him in, and we hadn't seen that so far this preseason, him running the gadget plays, and they tried that out this week. So it looks like they're trying to find ways to see how he can be effective in the offense so that they can plug him in as the wide receiver 5 and take advantage of his special team acumen as a returner and possibly not have to carry 6 receivers. So now I think it's going to be the guys that I rolled with before. I mean, I do question the extra defensive lineman a bit, but that Nick Williams thing still, I don't know, it sits with me. The fact that his name kept coming up, find it hard to believe that he won't make the 53, but it's either wide receiver or interior defensive lineman that are going to be my two questions, but I'm sticking with where I was.
Yeah, I don't think they played him today, Nick Williams.
I don't think he's played in the preseason at all, has he?
I don't think so. I think that's a pretty, well, in my mind, a pretty good indication of where he stands. But okay, so Craig's sticking with this 53. He's got two quarterbacks. You're still keeping Mark Webb as your fifth safety?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Jamie, let's move on to your 53. You have three quarterbacks here. You've got Mark Webb as your safety. You have Hinton and Gerard Clark making it outside of the top four interior defensive linemen. Where do you stand with this right now?
I have a couple changes.
Okay.
One that I'm pretty confident in, and one that I'm trying to talk myself into. I still think they go with three quarterbacks. I don't think there's any chance they're going to cut Duggan. So I'm not going there. The one I'm trying to talk myself into, and it's getting a little easier to believe, is Trey McKitty.
Okay.
I mean, Staley was pretty upfront about this being a big game for McKitty, and he didn't show at all. And they even tried to scheme up plays for him, and he didn't show at all. So right now, based on what I'm seeing from Smart, I think they can probably go with three tight ends and get Kent Moyer on the practice squad for right now. So I'm going to dump McKitty and go with three tight ends.
Okay.
The next change that I'm making is I'm taking that spot for tight end and I'm adding it to the cornerback room, and I'm adding Cam Brown to the cornerback room.
Okay.
And I'll make one more change, and that's going to be Christopher Hinton.
Okay.
Being replaced by Nick Williams.
Okay. Look at you. All right. I'm gonna get this up, but because I'm gonna do these changes live right now. All right. So talk to me about what made you switch Hinton and Nick Williams while I get this going.
Just kind of going back and going through what's been said about him and the fact that he isn't playing in the preseason, basically getting that starter treatment, and he's one of the few true nose tackles on the roster. And he's got some versatility. He can move up and down the line, familiar with the scheme. He's played with Mac. He's been coached by Staley before. I think there are a lot of ties there. So I think he winds up sticking.
Okay. Whoops. I'm gonna get this up here. All right. Let's present it for you. We'll get a look at your new 53 as it loads here. Perfect. All right. So you're saying McKitty's gone. This is a very, very strong. Here we go. Updated. McKitty's gone. 3 tight ends now. You added Cam Brown. I forgot to change the number on the CB, which is 6 now. And Nick Williams, defensive lineman. Okay. And you're keeping Mark Webb as a 5th safety. So
I am. DPs. I think he's still a core special teamer. I don't particularly see a reason to keep him. I don't think he showed up really at all in the game today, but he's still one of those quote unquote starters on special teams. And they're placing a pretty big emphasis on that. So I think Webb sticks, and maybe that's where they grab a roster spot from when Jalen Guyton comes back. Something along those lines.
Okay. All right. So Craig's got no changes. Jamie's got a couple, some hot ones too, which I love. All right. So here is my 53. I'm as much as I'd like to cut Duggan here, I'm not going to. I think they're going to keep him. I would love for them to dump him. He had 15 yards passing today. It wasn't very good. But So I'm keeping 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to make one change. I'm going to keep Nick Williams. I think Nick Williams makes it. I think Gerard Clark you have to keep because of Tito on the pup, which is up there in the corner. And because Mark Webb got the start today, it made me rethink my kind of DB room here, but I think I'm going to stick with what I have. The one thing I am going to change is my offensive lineman. Brendan Hymas is a nobody. He hasn't done anything at all this preseason in camp. Zach Bailey, they've been cross-training as a guard and a tackle, and I think that versatility wins him the last offensive line spot. So I'm trading Brendan Hymas out, putting Zach Bailey in. I'm keeping Cam Brown as my 6th corner, and I am not keeping Mark Webb. I just don't think he's done enough to solidify a spot on this roster. So this is my 53.
McKitty did enough to stick for you, huh?
No, but
or you just think they're not willing to cut him?
I don't think they're willing to cut a 3rd-round pick this early. I said it last night. Next year is when I think they really start to have the real hard conversation about McKitty. I just don't see them cutting him this early.
That's my only real sticking point with that change for me is the draft capital. I think it's something that they're not real keen on ditching. But Staley did say this was a big game for him, and he didn't show up at all. So I'm going to hold him to it.
Yeah, well, good for you.
Yeah, that's the only reason I can't remove him from my 53 is just because of the draft placement. I 1000% agree. He should be on his way out. And even if they decided they were going to roll with 4 after all, Hunter Campmoyer has done enough to me to be the 4th guy. And they've kept him around long enough for a reason. It seems like they like him. So this would be as good an excuse as any to get him on the 53-man roster if you feel like you need that 4th tight end, because there's nothing McKitty's showing you to justify that. So now at this point, it's just, they were doing the thing that they typically do, not willing to admit when they were wrong and let a guy go a year earlier than later.
So Stubbs wants to know, any consideration for Carlo Kemp in the edge group?
No, not really. And it's not that I don't like him or I don't think he's worthy. I just don't think there's room to carry 5 edges.
And on top of that tonight, I mean, there wasn't much pass rush to speak of at all on the outside. So I was looking for Kemp to kind of stand out there, and I didn't see very many reps where he was getting very much penetration, whether it was on, I don't know if he ran many loops or anything from the outside, but just as a pure edge rusher tonight, I didn't see a ton.
So let's talk practice squad. Show Low Man wants, oh wait, that's not you. Charger 4521 wants to know, would you put Brendan Hymas on the practice squad?
I don't know that they will. I don't know how tied they are to him at this point. We've seen them, granted it was his rookie year, but we've seen them go out of their way to keep him off the field with signings like Michael Schofield and Senio Calamete, however you pronounce his last name. I don't know how tied they are to him, and they've given him every opportunity to make rosters. He hasn't done much with it. I don't know what the point would be of keeping him on the practice squad at this point.
I personally can't remember one decent, even preseason performance I've seen from him in his time here. So as far as just his overall growth as a player, I don't think he's made big enough steps to justify a practice squad spot at this point. I mean, if they feel like there's still something there to work with, then fine, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't hate it, but if he doesn't seem like he's one of their guys, they don't seem, like Jamie said, it doesn't seem like they're overly attached to him at this point.
Okay, now let's talk practice squad.
What about you, Garrett?
I would say yes. I would say they are. I mean, they've moved him around to guard to center. I feel like they want to find a spot for him, and I don't think he's done enough to earn a 53, but I think he's done enough to get a practice squad spot in the case of an injury or they need any depth on the interior. So I would say yes. What about, so we've talked about some guys. Who do you guys want to name a player that you think has earned a practice squad spot? Everybody got one in mind?
I think there are a few who locked up spots tonight in particular.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. Give us one and we'll all go around.
Well, I'll start with Mikel Jones, the linebacker out of Syracuse. He's a guy who I liked when they signed him. Not a super athletic guy, but very instinctual, very quick to get to the ball because he knows he takes proper angles and his reads are generally pretty flawless, and he's a sure tackler. And he showed up in coverage tonight. And he showed up on special teams tonight. So if you're looking for a linebacker on that practice squad, I think Mikel Jones probably benefited the most from, and I'm blanking on his name, the kid that got hurt last week.
Oh boy.
Just on the tip of my tongue.
I know.
Blake something or other.
Lynch?
Blake Lynch. Yeah. I think Mikel Jones probably benefited the most from Lynch getting hurt. And I think he locked up a practice squad spot. They had him wearing the green dot. He showed up in 2 phases. I think he'll make the practice squad, assuming he clears waivers.
Okay. Greg?
This might seem like a no-brainer, but Keelan Doss. He's been the most consistent wide receiver throughout the preseason, and literally, I don't know if Easton Stick just loves the number 86 or not, but it's the only guy he apparently wants to throw the ball to. But he was making all sorts of tough catches. He's a bigger body guy, and the Chargers love that, of course. So just have somebody like that locked and loaded on a practice squad is probably ideal for them. But I mean, just to not take anything away from the guy, he's been super consistent throughout the preseason, showing really good hands, runs good routes. Not a separator, of course, but it's a Charger thing. He's done more than enough to earn the opportunity to remain on the practice squad, and someone that if they were to have to bring up, I guess you would be okay with. But I think that's a slam dunk practice squad guy. Pretty easy.
I would say, yeah. So I agree with both of those, obviously. I would think Tywan Mullen has earned his spot on the practice squad. I think he, quite honestly, started to at least make enough noise to have a tough conversation about squeeze him in the 53 if you could. But that cornerback room is already pretty deep with the guys they've already drafted. And Cam Brown showed up pretty good today too. And if he doesn't make the 53, I think he's a lock for the practice squad as well. But Tywan Mullen, even though he was undersized, the speed showed up, the reckless abandonment he had coming downhill. I really feel like he showed enough to at least have a conversation about keeping him on the 53 because I had thought about it. But I don't think he ultimately makes it, and I think he's earned a practice squad spot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, if you're looking at Mullen versus Brown, I think for me, at least the way I would make the decision is they've already got 2 guys who are pretty much limited to being slot corners. Well, I guess Zahn isn't really limited to being a slot corner, but they've got 2 guys who can play in the slot already. Plus, you've got Derwin who can come down and play in the slot. I don't think they really need another nickel corner. I think you just don't find guys like Brown that grow on trees, with the length and the physicality, the ability to press. And he just seems like he has a very natural feel for the game. His timing, getting his head around, getting his hands up. He seems much more polished than he even did on his college tape. I don't know if that speaks to the job they're doing coaching him right now, or if that's just who he was when he got here, but he just looks very, very natural to me. And I think those kinds of traits are hard to come by in NFL corners. So I think you stick with the bigger physical outside corner, especially, not really knowing what's going to happen with Michael Davis next year. I think having that bigger press guy to fall back on is going to be important.
Yeah. And I know that Jamie's probably going to agree with this also, but Andrew Farmer is another guy that has played pretty well throughout the preseason, just in both aspects of the game as a pass rusher and setting the edge. He's pretty solid, 6'4", 250-pound edge guy that you could utilize that length and, cultivate and develop it. And, he's in a pretty good room. The Chargers don't roll super deep when it comes to edge players. It's good that they'll have at minimum 4 this year, but just having Farmer on the practice squad is someone that can potentially be a contributor somewhere down the line, maybe in a rotational position in a year or two or whatever. Just, sticking. If you can keep him on the practice squad, as someone that you definitely want to be able to grow. He's got all the tools you need to play the position. And I mean, like I said before, he stands out virtually every game, whether it's, attacking tight ends and clamping down the edge and not allowing anything to get outside, or if it's just collapsing the pocket from the outside and forcing quarterbacks to have to step up. And actually saw a pretty decent bend from him around the corner, which I don't remember seeing a ton of before, but he's a little bit more athletic than what I even gave him credit for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think Farmer's definitely on the practice squad, assuming he clears waivers.
Mm-hmm. I'll just throw out, since we're just kind of jumping around here, Tyler Hoosman, we gave him a shout out earlier. I think, I guess Elijah Dotson before that, actually. I guess we can do both of them, but Elijah Dotson, I think a lot of people are talking about him maybe making the 53, kind of being one of those bubble guys, and I think he has earned the right to be in the conversation. I don't think he ultimately makes the team, so I think he's got to be a practice squad stash, and Tyler Hoosman did enough in the second half to earn himself a practice squad spot too, especially with both of them kind of getting some special teams work. So I guess I'll take a 2 for here. Sorry, guys. Elijah Dotson and Tyler Hoosman.
Yep. I agree.
You guys
with both
agree
those.
there? Craig?
Yeah, I would go with both. And Hoosman, I wasn't too sure about, but I think he showed enough, and it's been spoken to enough. You got the contrasting styles also there. He's more of a power guy, downhill runner, where Dotson's a little bit more of your outside slasher.
All right, Jamie.
I'll take a 2 for here. I think Camp Moyer makes a practice squad. They've already kept him, I think, for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So I think he'll stick on the practice squad this year. And then my guess is they'll stick with Hightower as well to continue to develop the route running.
Okay. Are you with that, Craig? I'm on the edge.
Are you talking about Hightower?
Yeah.
So I think you saw enough from him earlier in camp to give him a spot. I don't want to go back and watch because I don't want to discredit the guy yet. I just don't know how much Stick trusted him through these games. It doesn't seem like he was interested in targeting him very often. And there were a couple times where I did see Hightower running pretty free, and Stick just never made it to him in the progression. So I guess if you want to just kind of put back on the tape and watch him and not just, think about it from the perspective of how things went in the game flow and whether he got a bunch of targets or not, just look at how he performed as a route runner and if he was actually getting open. But I think he put on enough for them in camp to show that he's someone they can continue to develop.
Okay. All right, Craig, you got another one?
Well, I think we're pretty much good. I was thinking potentially, I think I was potentially going to look at, Brevin Allen was someone that I liked also as another edge guy. He flashed here and there, and he also kind of fits the bill with what, the Chargers look at, particularly Brandon Staley likes from his edge guy. So he's more of an athletic guy on the outside. So I could see him being someone that they slide into the practice squad as well. I wish he had made a few more plays throughout the preseason, but again, he's got the physical tools that they can work with. And, again, not as dominant an edge player, or he hasn't been as dominant an edge player as, say, an Andrew Farmer, but he's someone that you could probably get a little bit more creative with if you want to drop him in the coverage and stuff like that. So he's a name that can make it.
Okay. Yeah, Brevin was a guy I liked that could have made it. I'm just going to throw kind of a curveball out here. I think Tay Crowder could be a nice little practice squad stash. They said he only got like a day or two in practice and he's already out on the field. I don't think that's enough to slip him into the 53, but obviously a veteran linebacker, not like their linebackers the strongest group right now. I think it might be a nice little guy to stash. You already got him in house, coach him up a little bit. If any injuries occur, you've got at least a veteran linebacker on the practice squad you can call up. So I'd put Tay Crowder there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like I said last night, there's some alarm bells going off with that signing. Something's going on there. So one way or another, I think he's going to stick. It probably winds up being the practice squad. I'll throw Carlo Kemp out there for the practice squad only because he offers something that the other edge guys don't, which is a great deal of size. He plays at like 280. He's kind of a beast on the edge. So I think he could stick. And then we're missing CJ Quay.
Of course. Which they have 2 years of control that Telesco mentioned today on the broadcast.
They still have to pass him through waivers to get him to the practice squad, though.
What about he didn't really do much, but there was a lot of talk about him heading into camp. He had a really good rookie camp, and that's AJ Finley, the safety. You know, he was really thin coming into camp. It felt like he was a guy that had a lot of good ball skills, was pretty athletic, pretty physical, but really, really light, and seemed like he needed a year or two to kind of bulk up and get his body right before he'd even hit an NFL field yet anyway. And I had high hopes for him. I know that he had a couple interceptions in rookie camp. I think he could be a possible stash. You guys like that choice or no? You guys are going back and forth on it?
He fits the bill if you're talking about a more rangy guy who could probably play a little bit of single high. They don't have a ton of that outside of JT Woods, so it makes sense to have someone else like that you can put on the practice squad to continue to develop. I mean, again, I didn't see a ton from him within the preseason, but take it for what it's worth when scouting him and looking at some of what his upside is. You'll have to forgive me. I'm like drunk off of like not any sleep right now, but he's somebody that I think that they can stash, and in the event that they can continue to grow and find a spot for him, whether it's in too high or single high roles, he's a guy that you can put back there and trust that, you know, at least from the athletic and not just the skill standpoint of it, but also the athleticism and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm serious. I'm struggling. I'm driving struggle bus.
Yeah, we know you
instincts.
did two quarterbacks. Instincts.
Instinctually. Instincts. So instinctually, he's a guy that I think they can, you know, take advantage of. But yeah. Leave me alone.
I could go for keeping him just because there's so much uncertainty on the safety depth chart behind Derwin. You just don't know what's going to happen with any of those guys. And like Craig said, there aren't a lot of guys on the roster who can play single high. So I think having that kind of flexibility on the practice squad is important. And, you know, with the ball skills and the range, he's not a great tackler, but he's, in terms of, you know, like blowing guys up, but he's a reliable tackler in terms of getting guys to the ground. I think there's some traits there that you can kind of hang on to and develop.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. We're missing 3. Or do we leave it open for the waiver wire? Let me just throw quick yes or no to a couple names that were kind of on the bubble. We had talked about them at one point. Jahari Branch. I haven't seen much from him. I know there were some high hopes, and you even had him on the 53 in your first mock there, Jamie.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Oh, so I don't have them keeping Hymas on the practice squad. So for me, I think you have to have some kind of developmental piece for the interior line. So it's not going to be Austin Pleasance, I'll tell you that much. So I think it kind of has to be Branch. I think it kind of has to be Branch, and you develop him as a guard and as a center.
Okay. All right. Pokey Wilson. I'm out on him. I
don't see any reason to keep him, especially with what Doss did and with, I think, some of the things that we've seen they can develop in Hightower. I don't really think it's necessary.
Terrell Bynum. I say no.
I think they will keep Bynum. I think they like Bynum a good bit. Like, he had that bad drop tonight. Of course, it's a Max Duggan pass, naturally, but I think there's something to him. I could see them potentially stashing him. I think they stash at least one other receiver outside of Doss, and I think Bynum could be one of those guys.
Okay.
They usually keep at least 2, if not 3 receivers. So, and I agree. I think they like Bynum. I think there's an element to him that could potentially help them stretch the field. He was getting open down the field. He just wasn't getting the ball. So that's one I think to keep an eye on. I don't know that I'm ready to put him on, but I could see it happening.
What about the corner Matt Hankins? Made a play or two.
Yeah. I think that's one that you keep. If you're going to keep Mullins, I think you keep somebody on the practice squad who can play outside.
Craig, yes or no?
I'm going to say no, but I won't be shocked if they do. I understand like having an outside corner and, you know, those being your quote unquote lockdown guys and having someone that can play the boundary or to the field. But I just, I don't see it, but I wouldn't be shocked if they keep him.
And what about Ty Shelby? You've already got 3 edges basically already.
I don't think so. I think he gets squeezed out.
You too, Craig?
I was going to say yes, because I was thinking about, you know, how they value grooming new edge guys, but I was just thinking about what's in front of them and how they've been performing. So I'm going to roll with no.
All right. Then good. Let's get this up here so everybody can see what our practice squad looks like. If we're filling all 16 right now, here it is. Mikael Jones, Keelan Doss, Taiwan Mullen, Andrew Farmer, Elijah Dotson, Tyler Hoosman, Hunter Campmoyer, John Hightower, Brevin Allen, Tay Crowder, Carlo Kemp, CJ Okoye, AJ Finley, and then it's a crapshoot after this. Jahari Branch, Terrell Bynum, Matt Hankins. You can make a case for any of these guys. I think this first column is pretty much
dead on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then I think AJ Finley is when he start to get questionable, and everybody else after that is kind of hit or miss.
Yep. And it wouldn't surprise me if they only kept 2 edges. So one of Allen and Kemp. But I think this is the first time on the lightning round that we've ever done a full practice squad prediction.
We're with Craig. We're drunk we're almost 11 o'clock here, and it's probably like what, 1 or 2?
Almost one. Yeah.
It's late. Good. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for go ahead.
I do have one more question. So is there anything on the roster that you think if it became available via cut and on the 53? Okay, there you go.
Tight end.
Just curious.
I knew where you're going, and the answer is tight end. Mm-hmm. That's the thing I'm going to be looking at every single team cuts.
I would say tight end, and just based on who's being kept here, offensive line. Maybe go looking for another tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Or
oh my God, if you can get a veteran tackle, you'd be doing yourself a favor.
I think that's
kick Foster Sorrell the practice squad and get a veteran tackle. Absolutely.
I don't know that that's the direction they'll go in, but I'm just thinking.
Not that they're going to do that. That's what I would do. But go ahead.
That's what you would do. Yeah. I would just think that you're looking for some kind of a tackle option on the practice squad, just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Not Austin Pleasance.
No. Oh, well, definitely not him.
The speed bump.
Yeah. I don't know if interior defensive line makes any sense. There's a lot of guys there, but I wonder if maybe they want to get a little bit better than a Nick Williams or a Gerard Clark or a Christopher Hinton, maybe. I don't know. That might be.
I think they might like what they have on the interior.
They might. I'm just trying to think of other positions.
I think Clark makes it, but I think he only makes it until Tito is available.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clark's on the practice squad. So, and then other than that, unless they're looking to add a 7th, I don't know who, especially if they view Nick Williams as a starter, I don't really know who you would drop to add somebody. Because they've either got money invested in them or they've got draft capital invested in them.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the end of that depth chart.
No, I know, but I'm just saying from a standpoint of if they're going to carry 6.
Oh,
I mean, I think all 6 of those guys, once Tito comes back, are like locked in, right? Like who are you going to drop?
Yeah.
I guess you could make an argument for Nick Williams, but if they view him as a starter or at least a high end rotational piece, that seems unlikely.
Yeah.
So I don't know who you would cut to add somebody else.
And to answer your question, oh wait, that's not you, man. Everybody keeps getting in the comments. Well, I love that you guys are commenting, but Cameron Dickers, the kicker that the 3 of us each chose.
Yep.
And it's funny that the 49ers don't have a kicker right now.
They're their punter kicking.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Is anybody else surprised the Cowboys gave up a 4th round pick for Trey Lance? Like, what are you thinking right now if you're Dak Prescott?
I think Dak's been on high alert now for at least a year. It just seems like they've never really ever wanted to commit to Dak. It's kind of been out of necessity.
Yeah.
So, if I'm Dak, I'm already kind of starting. Well, I'm sure he can't be happy about it, and I wouldn't be shocked if you start hearing stories coming out of Dallas. Whatever. Dak's he's a team guy, so I can't see there being anything that creeps out of there. But a 4th round pick, that's a little shocking to me, though. It's the Cowboys, so I shouldn't be shocked by it. But yeah, a 4th rounder for a guy who hasn't proven that he can really play, and he barely played in college. Hasn't done much in the time that he's played in the NFL. He's been hurt, and you gave up a 4th round draft pick for that. That smells desperate, and I don't quite understand why you do that now.
And they extended Cooper Rush, right? So they've already got their QB2.
And they have Will Greer, who sucks, but I'm just saying, like, they've got
it just none of it makes sense. I haven't looked at Dak's contract situation, but I got to think they've got an out next year. And they're setting themselves up for it. It's just,
I think they do, if I'm not mistaken.
They have. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if they didn't, right? Because I think they re-signed Cooper Rush for 2 years.
They did, and he won them a lot of games.
He did.
When Dak went down.
So, yeah, they've got to be getting ready to get out from under Dak's contract. It's just, I don't know. I'm a little surprised.
We all are.
To give up a 4th for that.
Yeah. Casey, I keep coming across different rumors on the Chargers being interested in trading for Jonathan Taylor. Does it make sense to trade for him, or do we not have enough money? Probably a stupid question. There are no such thing as stupid questions. Well, I take
well,
they are.
There are.
There are.
Stupid, but there
it's
are
not stupid because everybody's asking. Yeah.
I have a hard time buying that they're. I mean, I could see them picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, what do you want?" Like everybody else should be doing. Not doing that is borderline fireable. You at least pick up the phone.
Yeah.
But in terms of them like being interested in getting something done, they didn't want to pay Austin Eckler in the offseason. Taylor is going to be more expensive. The only counter to that argument is Taylor is 4 or 5 years younger than Eckler. So maybe they're more comfortable extending Taylor than they are Eckler because of the age difference. But it just doesn't seem like that fits their organizational philosophy right now.
Yeah.
And I can't see it. I don't see how they make the money work. And I can't see them giving up the draft capital that they would need to make it work. So none of it really makes sense for me other than they know he wants to get the hell out of there and Indy's screwing up the relationship. So let's pick up the phone and see if there's something there.
Yeah. You at least call to see see what you can get out of him. Because, Irsay's crazy anyway, so maybe you can catch him on a drunk day or high day or whatever and get a good pick out of him. But
like a Tuesday?
Yeah, like
or Monday or Wednesday.
Any day that ends in day. It doesn't make sense. But how funny.
Garrett, don't go there.
I'm just saying in a theoretical
he already has, Jamie.
Hold on, I already did. because the Chargers they could do something really, really funny in that they trade for Jonathan Taylor. They pay Jonathan Taylor. They extend Jonathan Taylor and basically tell Eckler, like the face of the pay running back movement who coordinated this whole Zoom call, to give Jonathan Taylor the money and basically tell Eckler, it's not that we don't believe in paying running backs.
It's that we don't believe in
paying you. And so they pay Jonathan. So that whole thing that Eckler's been fighting for bites him in the ass because then Jonathan Taylor gets paid.
But he accomplished his mission because it was about everybody else, not about him.
Except he's now a martyr.
Right.
I can't lie. I would enjoy that immensely because I'm sick and fucking tired of Austin Eckler running his mouth about this.
Yeah.
Absolutely sick of it. But I seriously doubt it happens. But it would be fun.
It's not happening.
I mean, I like Eckler and I'm sick, but for different reasons. It's just it's a mental thing with me. I would just love to see that chaos happen. It would be just beautiful drama. I would love every minute of it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Does it make sense to you though, Craig?
There's a world where it makes perfect sense to me, but I mean, is it something that I believe that they would do? No. I wouldn't be mad about it if they did, though. I mean, you're talking about a premier running back that you can lock up for what he hasn't technically even really entered his prime at this point. He might just be nearing it, and you can get another solid 4 to 5 years out of him. Know that you won't have to deal with another running back. Well, hopefully you don't have to deal with another running back situation where you're, haggling over contracts, and you can have a top. Well, I don't want to say this to have it come off as disrespect towards Eckler, because Eckler is technically like a top, 5 to 7 back in the NFL if you're looking at all around production. Yeah. But Jonathan Taylor is just a different type of beast. The only other thing that stops me from that is just having younger, cost control running backs. I still want Isaiah Spiller to have the opportunity to go out and perform. And, if you can get another younger guy to be in tandem with him, that would be the optimal thing for me. So if I had my preference, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't hate it if they did.
Yeah, I think Craig makes a good point in that they're so expensive at quarterback, or they're about to get so expensive at quarterback, and they're so expensive at wide receiver. They're going to have to pay Rashawn Slater here in the next couple of years, who is not going to come cheap. They're expensive at corner. They're expensive at safety. They need some cost control options somewhere. And honestly, the best place to do it, one of the best places to do it from a roster building standpoint, is at running back, because you lock that guy up for 5 years at basically peanuts, and you've got him controlled, and then you just cycle him out for the next guy.
Yep.
If you need to when it's done. So that's the thing that I'm stuck on, is they've got to get cost controlled somewhere, and the easiest place to do it, to find that kind of talent and do it consistently, is at running back.
And I get it. That's what sucks about the running back position, because you have all these other skill positions that are paid so highly that someone's going to have to suffer, and it's the running backs right now. It's their turn, and it's unfortunate, but it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah. That's the business. Yeah, I feel bad for them because they deserve to get paid, but it's just so easy to replace. It's just part of the business. All right. I think we're good. Right, guys?
I think so.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks for tuning in. That's our 53. That's our practice squad. That's some talk on Jonathan Taylor. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.